Once you get to some sort of scale in terms of the number of customers you have, they will tell you what the problems are and they will continue to educate you about what problems are important. All you have to be good at is listening. Spend a lot of time talking to your customers, listening to what their pain points are, what are they willing to pay to solve. And if you do that really well, your roadmap writes itself. Even today, our planning process, 95% of it is almost exclusively just coming straight from what our customers are telling us. We are not ever sitting there and saying, what should we work on next? Like, what is the problem we should solve? I'm Thejo Kote, and I'm the founder and CEO of Airbase.
This is Code Story, a podcast bringing you interviews with tech visionaries who share in the critical moments of what it takes to change an industry and build and lead a team that has your back. I'm your host, Noah Laphart, and today how Thejo Kote built the #1 spend management solution, helping finance teams build great companies. All this and more on Code Story. Thejo Kote grew up in southern India. He came from an academic intellectual family. Both of his grandfathers were authors, and in the house they had built up a large library. But not just a few books here and there. Thejo grew up with 3,500 books in his house. These were a combination of everything, but with a lot of reference and historical books. And if he's honest, Thejo didn't appreciate it really until he got older. However, no one appreciated it when it was time to move. He was influenced a lot by what he was reading and watching, which he noted allowed him to learn from the experiences of others. Ultimately, his path took him down the road of tech and entrepreneurship. He's always been fascinated with how impactful tech can be to the world. You sit at home, write some code, and make an impact. Prior to his current venture, he co-founded Automatic, connecting cars to the internet. This eventually sold to SiriusXM for several $million. Looking into another problem, he saw that the way people spend money lacked true visibility and connectivity between systems. He asked some questions, got some feedback, and set out to capitalize on the opportunity to build a better solution. This is the creation story of Airbase.
Airbase is what I think of as a spend management platform, and the core problem we solve is, think about any business. One thing all of them have in common is that, hey, they spend money, right? And what kind of money do they spend? You can put it in two big buckets. Payroll is all the salaries that you pay employees, and then everything else. If you think about how financial operations happen in a business, managing payroll is relatively easy, right? There are payroll systems. You set them up and you keep it updated and it works. But all of the other dollars, which could be marketing spend and software subscriptions and travel and food and like the 100 other things that companies tend to spend money on, the process of managing that is very messy, especially for small mid-market businesses, which are most of the businesses out there, right? Like there are not that many businesses that have more than a few thousand employees out there, which means that the majority of businesses out there really struggle with how those non-payroll dollars are spent, primarily because it happens in many different silos. Every business has a corporate card system. They're receiving invoices, so they have some kind of a bill payment system for that process, or they're doing it from the bank account directly in terms of wiring money out to vendors. Employees are spending their own money and trying to reimburse it, and there are systems like Expensify and things like that dedicated to that task, and on and on and on, right? So you end up with 4, 5, 6 different systems involved in the process of managing all the workflows and payments that have to happen. It's just a pain for every single persona in the company, especially for the finance and accounting people in dealing with so many systems. But even if you're an employee, right? Like if you're requesting spend, if you're approving spend, just having so many systems, so many workflows, it's just a big pain. And I faced that challenge when I was building my first company, Automatic, and it was a very different business. It was a connected car platform and had nothing to do with kind of spend management, but it was a problem I learned about during the process of building that company. And long story short, I after I went through that journey, and we sold the business to SiriusXM, satellite radio company. I was thinking about what I was going to do next, and this was the problem I kept coming back to, because I thought it was fundamentally broken. Just the way in which companies spend and manage money, the lack of real-time visibility into how money is being spent by all the budget owners, the nature of how decisions are made to spend money, where most people are just winging it, and how information does not flow in real time to help people make good decisions. All of that is just was frustrating to me, and it seemed like a big enough problem. And I started digging into why is the status quo the way it is, why so many systems, and why did the ecosystem develop the way it did. And again, after doing a lot of research, speaking to dozens of CFOs and controllers and accounting managers, I became convinced that, look, there's a big opportunity here. You can go create a much better solution, which essentially for us is to bring all of those elements together into a single platform, right? So every single non-payroll dollar workflow, all workflows and payments, how can you have it in one place, right? How can you have a corporate card system, bill payment system, expense reimbursement system, and all the related request approval workflows, accounting, automation, and all of that, bring it all together. And it's a tall order, but I think that's the future. And there was a reason why you couldn't solve it that way even about 5 years ago, and that's a longer conversation. But that's what we're doing, and I'm confident that is going to be the default expectation of the market, over the coming years. And I don't think I'd be able to get up in the morning if I didn't believe that, after seeing what that experience can be when you have everything working out of one seamless system end to end. Would anybody go back and say, no, I prefer 3, 4, 5 different systems? I just don't think that's going to happen. And that's what kind of keeps me going and convinces me that, hey, there's a really big opportunity ahead of us.
Let's jump into the MVP then. So tell me about the first product you built, how long it took you to build, and what sort of tools you used to bring it to life.
I've done it the wrong way, and I'd like to think I did it the right way with Airbase. And the wrong way, the trap that a lot of engineers fall into, and as an engineer, the trap I've fallen into in the past, is that you think of a problem, and then you jump in and start writing code to build the solution to that problem, right? Which in my experience is almost always a mistake. Because it is so much more expensive to correct mistakes once you've committed it to code. It takes a lot more time, a lot more money, and also there is the psychological aspect of not changing or giving up on the thing that you have built, which is also expensive in its own way, right? So with Airbase, what I ended up doing was I didn't write a single line of code for the first, say, 6 to 8 months of me working on the project. Initially, I had a hypothesis, obviously, about what the problem was and how I could potentially solve it. And as I said earlier, I spent a good 6 months talking to dozens of CFOs, controllers, accounting managers, the people who live this problem every single day. Of course, learned a lot about the problem during that process, even more than I kind of already knew myself through my exposure to it. We just became a lot more smarter about it and built, the opinions and a hypothesis about what the solution should be in a much more granular way, right? And after that, what I essentially did was, again, no code. I went back and I sat down and I sketched the solution to that problem. First deeply understand the problem. Then I just sat down, how would I solve this? What would the tool be to solve this? What would the workflows look like? What would the UI be? And I kind of sketched that out, and I worked with a designer to create high fidelity mock-ups of what those workflows would look like. I went back to a bunch of the people I'd been speaking with just to show them, look, we talked about the problem. You agree that there's a big problem here, and here's how I think it can be solved, right? So let me walk you through the workflow. And I did that with a bunch of people, and essentially, got them to agree that, this will solve the problem. And then the conversation was simply, great, if I go build this, will you buy it? And I essentially pre-sold the product to about a dozen CFOs and controllers, and there was nothing at that point, by the way. And because there was a high fidelity mock-up, maybe CFOs and controllers don't understand the difference between a mock-up and a finished product. It seemed to them like, hey, this must be pretty close. It's almost done, right? And you can kind of deliver it pretty quickly. And they were like, yeah, this is great. If you just can deliver this exact thing and it works the way you're showing it to me, then I will definitely use it. And then I'm like, okay, great, I'll come back to you in a bit. And that's when I went away and started building the solution. And obviously I started building the product on my own, started hiring engineers around me, and in about 6-7 months we launched the first aspect of the overall larger platform that we've been working on for the last 4 years, and that was the corporate card spend management aspect of it. So we've never called ourselves a corporate card. There are like lots of startups today which are just corporate card startups, right? And partly because strategically I've always believed that that's kind of a race to the bottom business, and there isn't really much differentiation. If all you're trying to do is provide cash back and rewards and things like that, and trying to differentiate based on that, we've always been very focused on being a workflow driven company. And our long-term strategy is not to participate in the corporate card wars, but it is a very real problem that management of spend that happens on corporate cards in small mid-market businesses is challenging. But our thesis there is that with the corporate card of the future, it's a software workflow product. It's not really a piece of plastic that you put in an envelope and send to employees. That I think is just going to go away. The corporate card is morphing into a software workflow product, and we wanted to bring that to the market. Like, how do you put pre-approval workflows before money is spent? How do you have the right controls through virtual cards? How do you automate away accounting as transactions are happening? That's all a software workflow product. So that's the first product we built and took to customers, and because all of that work had happened already in terms of validating the pain, the customers lapped it up, they started using it, and that's how it started. Of course, we have since built out the rest of the platform, and we continue to do that, but that was the kind of the initial, say, 8 to 12 months.
When you went to those customers and said, would you buy this? Was it a formal process? Were you doing LOIs or anything like that? Or was it just, hey, I just need to validate that people are actually going to verbally tell me I'm going to purchase your product?
Yeah, look, it's a handshake agreement, right? And part of my early selling process was just in my network. And because our focus has almost always been on the mid-market and upper mid-market, early enterprise, think of it as initially the focus really was on that 100 to 1,000 employee companies, because that's where the pain is typically, right? Because smaller companies, they're not spending that much money, and some of these control visibility challenges aren't that much of a challenge because they're not spending a lot of money, they don't have a lot of transactions. So we were really focused on the segment where the pain was a lot more acute, and so I used my network to just found friends and got intros to their heads of finance and things like that. And so this was all kind of within my network of people that I knew fairly well, and so I didn't feel the need to say sign a contract right now. It was more of a gentleman's agreement that, hey, we've had conversations about this, and if I actually go deliver on a solution to the pain, then you're going to give it a good shot. It was not even you are committing to using it and then paying me later, because there are lots of question marks and a gulf between a promise and execution, right? And so there was no need to put them in that situation. I was confident that we'd execute and deliver on the product, but it was more of a gentleman's agreement that if I deliver on my end of the bargain here of delivering the solution, that you'll give it a good shot and use it and give me feedback, and that was where it started.
When you're building any MVP, right, you got to make certain decisions and trade-offs about, around feature cut, or even we'll call it feature focus, right, or technical debt. Tell me about some of those decisions and trade-offs you had to make when you were building your MVP and how you coped with them.
In the early days, say the first 18 months, I was pretty strict about defining the milestones that I really cared about for the business, right? And I didn't raise a seed round of funding. I just funded the business myself, because I also knew that if you had de-risked the business the right way, right, and hit those initial milestones, the kind of value of the business would go up, much more. Because at the end of the day, how do you increase the value of the business, you continuously de-risk all the risks in front of it, right? And so those first 18 months were about me figuring out the important milestones to answer those questions of related to de-risking the business. And the milestones were things like, hey, do we deeply understand what segment we should be going after? Where is the pain most acute? Because you could go after 5 employee companies, you could go after 50 employee companies, you could go after 500 employee companies or 5,000 employee companies. But there are very few companies in kind of the history of technology that have been very successful serving every segment of the market, right? And so almost always you have to have focus on a particular segment because the nature of the problem is different in different segments, and everything else about the company and how you scale it, how do you acquire customers, how do you, what are your demand generation strategies, and how do you build up your marketing team, how do you build up your sales motion, and how do you even build product and support it, how do you do customer success, like every element, especially in the B2B business, it's different if you're trying to go after 100,000 customers. Think about the classic, okay, I need to get to $100 million of revenue. How do you do it? You could have 100,000 customers paying you $1,000 a year, 1,000 customers paying you $100,000 a year, 100 customers paying you $1 million a year. They're all valid ways to get there, but they are very different businesses, internally in all of these different functional areas in the business. And so you have to form that opinion. Otherwise, you're going to start investing in sales and marketing without really knowing, what segment am I going after? Like, what is the most optimal way for me to go spend that money in sales and marketing to acquire the kinds of customers where I know I can scale to a meaningful level. So as a business, if you haven't formed that opinion on who is my customer, you're going to just end up wasting a lot of time and money just trying to go get those customers. So one important milestone was, what's the segment? Like, what is the ideal size of that customer? Who is the buyer, right? And who is the person that I should be selling to, speaking with, where the probability of them actually buying is going to be quite high. And yes, I also had a hypothesis about what the pain point was and what the solution is. I'd validated it, but are people actually going to use it, right? When you put a product in people's hands, how they behave can be very different than what they've been saying to you, right? And so getting evidence around that. And another milestone was to show that this wasn't just a product that finance and accounting people would appreciate and find value in, because the entire business spends money, right? A lot of other employees in the company are going to be in a system like this, placing requests and doing approvals and all that kind of stuff. And so what are their thoughts going to be? What is kind of the high-level NPS, if you will, from the rest of the employee base be? Are the financing teams, accounting teams going to like this, but the rest of the company is going to hate it? That's not a good place to be in. And so that was another milestone. And another one was, how much can I actually charge for this? Like doing that experimentation and building data and evidence around that. Is this software that you can never charge, say, more than $100 a month or something like that? Or is it software we can actually charge tens of thousands of dollars, or over time hundreds of thousands of dollars, because there's that kind of strategic value to the business? Determining that again is very important, because that will ultimately have a lot of influence on how you build your go-to-market operation, right? And so the focus was on hitting these milestones and answering these questions and being kind of methodical in checking those boxes and getting to what you could think of as early product market fit, right? And so that's kind of what the early days were all about.
Let's go to the next step then. So early product market fit, you've got it now. How did you progress the product from there, and how did you mature it? And I think to frame that question a little bit, I'm interested in how you built your roadmap and how you decided, okay, this is the next most important thing to build.
Here's a fun thing about B2B businesses, right? My previous company, there was a consumer aspect to it, there was an enterprise aspect to it, and consumer businesses are hard. And the good thing about B2B businesses is, once you get to some sort of scale in terms of the number of customers you have, they will tell you what the problems are, and they will continue to educate you about what problems are important to be solved. All you have to be good at is listening, right? And for the most part, the roadmap writes itself. Just spend a lot of time talking to your customers, listening to what their pain points are, what are they willing to pay to solve. And if you do that really well, your roadmap writes itself, right? And even today, our planning process, any given month, any given quarter, 95% of it is almost exclusively just coming straight from what our customers are telling us, right? And we have a large enough customer base now that we are not ever sitting there and wringing our hands saying, what should we work on next? Like, what is the problem we should solve? And this is a fertile enough area of, when you think about the larger area of how companies spend money, spend management, lots of complications, lots of workflows, lots of adjacent problems to that core problem of how money gets spent in the business, that customers just lead us, right? And so that's how we do it. We just listen hard and ultimately it's a prioritization exercise in any given quarter. Obviously there are always constraints, no matter how much engineering capacity you have, design capacity you have, product management capacity you have, customer demand will be far greater than that, right? And so then it becomes an exercise when you're planning to say, what are the most popular requests here and what can we fit in given the capacity we have, and we go build that, right? And so that's kind of how we do it.
Well, let's switch to team then. So how did you go about building your team, and what did you look for in those people to indicate that they were the winning horses to join you?
I'm doing that in a very different way with Airbase. Like I said, this is my second business. With my previous company, we were completely based out of San Francisco. We had an office there, and we grew. The company grew there. We had multiple offices over time, and everybody was there, like physically located in one office. And I'm never doing that again, right? It's incredibly challenging in a variety of ways. Partly because, look, when you're trying to, in a place like San Francisco, it's incredibly competitive. I remember when I was building my previous company, Uber and Lyft were, and a few other companies like that were also scaling really rapidly, raising their billions of dollars, and obviously they were trying to suck up all of the good talent in the market. So, the all important, if you're a technology company, it's all about the people, right? It's all about the team and the people you can attract and the product you can build and sell. And so, that just is a challenge when you're trying to do it in an incredibly competitive environment like San Francisco, and your talent strategy is something that is you don't control that completely, right? And it's also very expensive. You are paying the price for a lot of policy problems in kind of the general geographic area. Cost of living is very high, and housing, affordable housing is not available, which makes everything more expensive, all those kinds of stuff, right? Which as a company you don't have any control over, but you're paying the price for it, and which means you're raising more money, getting profitability is harder, and you're taking more dilution, on and on and on, right? So all of these things kind of stack up, and obviously I wasn't smart enough to realize some of the second order, third order effects of what a choice like that in the very early days of the business, how can it influence the outcome and your ability to execute and scale as you go. And obviously when I started Airbase, I had learned those lessons, and I decided, okay, I'm definitely not building a team that's completely based out of San Francisco or the Bay Area, and we are a fully distributed team. And so one of the core decisions I made early on was to say we'll hire people anywhere in the world, right? And so obviously we were not pioneers in that. There were a bunch of other companies who had been doing that, and GitLab and InVision and the WordPress parent company had been doing that. Zapier, and a bunch of them had been, and my attitude was just to say, look, if they can do it, we can probably figure it out and do it too. But the sheer advantage of access to talent, right? And there are smart people everywhere in the world, right? And it's not like just in Silicon Valley or in this area that you can find good engineers. You can find them everywhere. And so I started kind of hiring. And for me, naturally, India was a location that I was comfortable with. I grew up there, and so I started bringing on engineers over there. Obviously, but we never lowered the bar. It doesn't mean that just because you don't hire over here, you have to lower the bar or something like that. And there are equally good engineers everywhere. And if it's an engineer that I'm not going to hire here, in the Bay Area, I'm not going to hire them anywhere. It doesn't matter where you are in the world. And so, but that was the principle, right? And that's how I went about doing it, and it's been great. We almost like grew the engineering team by a third last quarter. We're going to kind of do it again, this quarter, and we're hiring at a very rapid pace, and something we just could not have done if we had a team that was completely based out here. And we have engineers in Chile and Romania, and an engineering manager in Singapore, and the bulk of the team is still based out of India, but all over India, like I don't know, 15, 20 cities at this point in India, maybe more. And so we've made that remote model work for us, which has allowed us to scale, and it's now a competitive advantage for us, right? In that we can literally put 3, 4, 5 times the engineering product capacity behind the problem that we're solving, which in a domain that we are in, B2B SaaS kind of software, workflow driven software, that's a massive competitive advantage, where it's all about how many workflows can you build, the configurability and the knobs that you have to add support for as you serve the needs of various types of businesses. So talent strategy can have a big influence on product strategy and company strategy as a whole. And I at least wasn't sophisticated enough when I was building my first company to make that connection and to understand the outcome of some of those choices. And I'd like to think we've done a better job of that with Airbase, right?
This episode is sponsored by Vanta. You're a startup founder. Finding product market fit is probably your number one priority. But to land bigger customers, you also need security compliance. And obtaining your SOC 2 or ISO 27001 certification can open those big doors. But they take time and energy, pulling you away from building and shipping. And that's where Vanta comes in. Vanta is the all-in-one compliance solution helping startups like yours get audit ready and build a strong security foundation quickly and painlessly. How, you ask? Vanta automates the manual security tasks that slow you down, helping you streamline your audit. And the platform connects you with trusted VCSOs to build your program, auditors to get you through audits quickly, and a marketplace for essentials like pen testing. Join over 8,000 companies, including many Y Combinator and Techstars startups who trust Vanta. Simplify compliance and get $1,000 off at vanta.com/codestory. That's VANTA.com/codestory. This episode is sponsored by Kinsta. Between juggling client meetings, managing your website, and keeping up with everyday tasks, who has the time to stress out about website security? Well, with Kinsta, the technical stuff is taken care of, so you can focus on what you do best. Kinsta provides managed hosting for WordPress, offering lightning-fast load times, top-tier security, and unmatched human-only customer support. Whether you're a business owner, web developer, or running a digital agency, Kinsta makes managing your website easy and efficient. Kinsta provides enterprise-grade security, being one of the few hosting providers for WordPress with SOC 2 and other certifications, guaranteeing the highest level of security for your website. Thanks to their unlimited free expert-led migrations, Kinsta ensures a smooth transition for you from other hosting providers. Customers have reported 200% faster load times post-migration to their platform. What I find cool about Kinsta is their fast and reliable customer service and premium features that are included at no extra cost. Ready to experience Kinsta's hosting for yourself? Get your first month free when you sign up at kinsta.com today. That's KINSTA.com. My next question touches on scalability. So I understand how you approach scalability from a team standpoint and how you've achieved that. Tell me about scalability from the product. Did you build it originally in the MVP stage to scale efficiently, or are you kind of fighting this? Were you fighting this as you grew?
There is a tendency to over-engineer, and there is a tendency to cut corners and take on too much tech debt. And those are kind of the two ends of that spectrum, right? Obviously, what you're trying to do is find that right balance, and experience is what allows you to find that right balance, right? So where you're asking yourself, look, I don't want to spend a huge amount of time over-engineering this to the point where I'm building something to support millions and millions of users or whatever it is, because hey, I haven't earned the right to do that yet. We haven't even shown that we have product market fit. And so in the early days, what you're trying to do is to build a product that answers the core questions and hit the milestones that you've defined for yourself. And of course, you're trying to do that in a way where there is extensibility, where you're making technology choices, you are making choices where, okay, if the user base does increase 10x from where I am today over the next 12 months, can I still support that? And it's a constant kind of process of improvement. You're never going to plan for, I'm going to build something today that has to work without a single extra line of code change for 1000x the scale or capacity that I am at today. That's just not a good use of time, energy, resources, money. There is always this balance between time to market and doing it in a way where you're not signing up for a lot of tech debt, where you have to go rewrite everything from scratch and build it all over again. And so it's that balance between saying, how do I make sure I'm good for the next 12 months, 18 months at least, and I've given myself a path to scale and serve the needs of the customers. And then along the way, if you earn the right for that next 10x after that, great. You might have to kind of tweak that, break it out into separate services or whatever architectural changes that you need to make. But every big decision like that, I think you have to earn the right to do that over time, because that is not the problem you're trying to solve. Being able to technically scale the product, there are very few types of companies where that is the heart of the business, right? So if you're a B2B SaaS workflow-driven company, for example, there are other existential risks that you have to de-risk before you really worry about scalability of the technology, right? So you have to worry about, do I understand the problem deeply enough? Do I have an angle into the market that is sound? Do I have an efficient way of acquiring customers? And those are all more important questions than, hey, can I suddenly support 10x more customers? The chances are, especially in a business like us, that's not the big challenge, right? So we can do that. But that might not apply if you're fundamentally the offering itself is about ingesting huge amounts of data and things like that. Then your ability to even deliver the core value of the product is tied into the architectural choices you make and things like that. In that case, I would think about it a little bit more. But so it's really that trade-off that matters for the type of business you're building.
Well, as you step out on the balcony and you look across all that you've built, what are you most proud of?
Airbase has been a super interesting journey for a lot of different reasons, right? And from a personal challenge perspective, psychological perspective, the goals that I had for myself with Automatic and the goals I have for myself with Airbase, they're quite different, right? And I was, I'm literally living my dream. And if you went back 10, 15 years and said I'd be doing what I'm doing today, I would probably not believed you. I'd have obviously taken it, and so the outcome has been incredible. But as a first-time founder, the journey and the focus was different than what it is now. And I was fortunate to have an exit, and it was life-changing in all the right ways and all that. But so I get to focus now on maybe things that are higher up in the Maslow's hierarchy. If I started my previous company as a broke grad student with absolutely nothing, and so the pressure to actually make it work and succeed and all of that was a lot higher, right? But with Airbase, obviously, I'm competitive and we want to win, and we think there's a big opportunity, and that's what drives a lot of what we do. But I'm a lot better at enjoying what I think are even more important things to me at this stage of my career and life and all of that, which is even more than money, even more than just the absolute dollars and success and revenue and things like that. Is just the joy of building something awesome with a really smart group of motivated people, taking a blank canvas and creating something of value which a lot of people acknowledge and use every day, and the kind of impact it has on their businesses and the contribution you can make to that. Those are kind of the more fun parts for me, right? And that's what gets me out of bed in the morning. And an extra little bit of amount of money in the bank, that's not a sufficient motivator, right? So it is it's the human connections and the value and all of that which drives me.
Well, let's flip the script a little bit. Tell me about a mistake you made and how you and your team responded to it.
No, this could be a multi-hour conversation on its own. Obviously, lots of mistakes in my journey as a founder, right? And you just think about building companies, lessons learned, mistakes made. I'd like to think with Airbase, I've made far fewer mistakes. I made so many more mistakes in my previous company as I was building it. But the big one that I look back to, which think about pretty much every day as I'm building Airbase, is this notion of controlling our own destiny, right? So we have a pretty rigorous company values defined at Airbase, and it's one of the other lessons about how you scale culture and how you kind of make sure that you don't lose your values as you scale, and that's a whole other discussion. But value number one in terms of our company values at Airbase is control our own destiny, right? And that's the mistake I made with my previous companies. I wasn't smart enough to control my own destiny or the company's destiny along that journey. We were a venture funded company and all that. We raised multiple rounds of funding. Ultimately, it all turned out well, but that journey was probably a lot harder than it had to be. And if I was a more experienced founder, I would have probably done a better job around controlling our own destiny. And what I mean by that is, every single round of funding that we raised, for example, I was never in a position where I didn't need the money. I desperately needed the money. Every single round of funding that we raised it, because we were not profitable and we were, losing money as a business, and the pace at which the revenue was coming in was obviously not growing at a rate to outstrip the costs of running the business and the team that we had to support and all that kind of stuff. And that's not a good place to be in, right? And for all kinds of reasons, and all the way from who do you take money from, what terms do you take money on, and so on and so forth. And that's a big mistake, right? And that led to other forms of pain down the line, which is we had to do layoffs along the way and let people go and get kind of that control back and increase runway and that kind of stuff. And ultimately, as CEO, that's on me. And when you have to do those kinds of things, I have to take responsibility. And in terms of the team, some people got it. They understood that that's part of the journey and the up and down journey. Others didn't kind of handle it as well, and that's part of the journey too. And I take away my lessons from that up and down journey, and obviously I wouldn't trade it for anything. Those are probably more valuable than even the most valuable MBA out there, right? So you get to learn about the important choices you have to make as you're building a business. But that's maybe one I'll point out when you talk about mistakes and how I do it. So it's not maybe as specific, but I think it's still the most important thing that any founder should really think about, is how am I controlling my own destiny? How am I not putting the future of my business into somebody else's hands, or under the assumption that somebody will come give me the money and keep funding it? And especially in venture funded companies, that's a very common mistake founders make. Markets can turn, businesses can turn, competition can come after you in a really aggressive way. All those things you don't really control and predict or can't predict. And so being thoughtful about controlling your own destiny, I think, is super important. And I've learned that lesson.
What does the future look like for Airbase, the product, and for your team?
We've picked a big goal for ourselves, right? So we've said, look, every non-payroll dollar that a company spends, we wanted to go through one platform, one set of workflows. And of course, in the grand scheme of things, that might seem like slightly boring as a problem. I still think it's fantastic in that we can help businesses be more effective. We can give millions of people who work in the finance and accounting profession so much of their time back, which is spent doing low value work, and we can help them again move up that curve of value of doing strategic work and all of that. So I find it super exciting, and we continue to go down that path, but it is a big problem, right? And there are many adjacent opportunities. The core thing that we obviously end up in focusing on, and the place we have in any business, is being in the middle of those workflows of how the business spends money, right? So that's a very strategic place to be in, and we are right in the middle of that, and so that's exciting. But off of that core strategic workflow of how do you spend money as a business hangs off lots of other adjacent problems and opportunities that makes it a very big opportunity for us. And that's also one of the kind of considerations I was talking earlier about how I evaluated this opportunity over multiple months. One of the things I wanted to convince myself was, is this a huge market and a big opportunity with the kind of runway to go build something big? That was an important consideration for me. Automatic, my previous company, was great for a first company, but for me personally, I felt like my ambitions were bigger than what we ended up doing there. So I wanted to pick an opportunity that was a lot bigger in the bigger market and things like that. And Airbase is that. So there is a lot for us to do from that perspective, and a lot of runway to go build a very valuable business. That's what keeps it exciting. And from a team perspective too, and a rising tide lifts all boats at the end of the day, and lots of growth opportunities for people on the team. And there have been lots of people who've been along this journey over multiple years, and it's awesome to see them grow along with the company and take on more and more responsibility. And we continue to hire rapidly and add to the team, and that won't stop for quite a long time.
Let's switch to you, Thejo. Who influences the way that you work? Name a CEO, CTO, architect, really any person. Name a person that you look up to and why.
I'm definitely a student of technology history, and I love reading biographies, and I love reading the founding stories of companies, and there are always lessons there. I'm a big believer in learning from the mistakes of other people so that I hopefully don't repeat them myself, and so that's always been the case. And and it's not just about this technology history and the technology industry. That's always interesting because I live in that world every day. But it's also just leadership in general, and for example, my wife thinks I'm a little weird because I'm kind of fascinated by the world wars and all of the deep history associated with that. And I maintain that all of the life lessons that you need to know, like if you understand the motivations of the war and the choices that people had to make, and every dimension of human behavior, be it good or bad, and bravery or cowardice or evil or good, and difficult choices and leadership, and you find so many lessons in all of those dimensions when you study history, right? Because a lot of the problems that we face every single day, these are not new problems. Like humanity has been facing these problems, and smart people have been making choices for millennia, and so that's always been interesting to me, even outside of technology, right? But closer to home, like the person that I've always looked up to, it isn't some person that I've never met or known. It's actually my grandfather, and he's always, not that he was a perfect human being, I guess nobody is, and as I've gotten older, that's another thing I've come to realize is there is no perfection, right? And so it's all shades. At the end of the day, you're good at some things, you're not good at other things, and life at the end of the day is just a journey towards trying to become better at the areas that you're not, and trying to learn from everybody. There's always something to learn from everybody, right? There is no absolutes in terms of good and evil or good or bad. And my grandfather was there was a lot that I still took away from him. His incredible work ethic, discipline, and all of those kinds of things. He came up in a very tough kind of childhood story, but he made something out of himself in life, and I'm incredibly fortunate that I am where I am today, and the opportunities that I've had in life. And that's a very easy thing for me to fall back on. Every time something is difficult in my life, I just stop and I think back to the incredibly difficult life that my grandfather had, and I think, does this even come close? And the answer is not even close. So I just shut my mouth and keep going, right? And so no complaints. And so it's closer to home for me in terms of people influence, and that's how I think about it.
Well, we talked about a mistake, right? But a little bit different spin. If you could go back to the beginning or sometime in the past, what would you do differently, or where would you consider taking a different approach?
At the end of the day, entrepreneurship, it's about mental stamina. Building anything of value, especially when it comes to businesses, venture-funded businesses, where it is a marathon and a sprint at the same time, right? So it's all about growth. It's intense. It's fun in its own way, but managing your own psychology is incredibly important. And one thing that I felt I didn't do as well in my first journey was just not burning out, right? And part of the reason we ultimately sold the company, at least from my perspective, was I was just burnt out of my skull, and I just didn't have it in me to keep going for a few more years. We were about 6 years into that journey, and I'd like to think Automatic could have been a much more valuable business, in a lot of different ways. But I just couldn't, keep going, and because I was just burnt out 6 years in, right? And so one of the big things I'm doing differently now is being smarter about managing my own time, my own psychology, my own kind of mental health, and how I approach that, right? And the discipline around that.
Last question, Thejo. So you're getting on a plane and you're sitting next to a young entrepreneur who's built the next big thing. They're jazzed about it. They can't wait to show it off to the world. Can't wait to show it off to you right there on the plane. What advice do you give that person, having gone down this road a bit?
I would probably not even, look at the product, because, smart people will build cool stuff. That's awesome, right? But if it truly was in terms of helping the entrepreneur, the most impactful advice that I could probably give them based on my own experience is to not connect their own sense of self-worth and success or failure too deeply with that of the company, right? And this is a mistake I've made in the past. I've seen a lot of founders, my friends, do the same thing. And especially when you're a founder, maybe you go through this, no, I don't know, but maybe you've learned the right lessons along the way, but you end up tying the success or failure of the company and the ups and the downs too deeply with your own personality and your own sense of self-worth, and that's tough. Part of that burnout and part of that the whiplash of the up and down journey takes its toll, and it's also not good for business, right? So it's not just about the personal psychology side of things. It's also just not conducive to having a rational mind and making good, high-quality decisions, which at the end of the day, that's what it is in leadership roles as you're building a business, right? So my input would be to learn to step away, right? And to get better at stepping away and, taking that third-party perspective, looking at the business outside in, being much better at not tying the business to yourself as an individual, because it also allows you to be more intellectually honest, right? And it allows you to take this view that other people might about your business, and you will actually be a better founder, a better leader, and ultimately along that journey, I think it'll also help from your own psychological health, right? And that would be my input, and I try that. It's not easy. It's an ongoing journey, and I'm on that journey all the time, and I hope I continue to get better at that. But it's an important one as far as I'm concerned.
Absolutely. That's fantastic advice. Well, Thejo, thank you for being on the show today. Thank you for telling the creation story of Airbase.
Thank you for having me, Noah.
And this concludes another chapter of Code Story. Code Story is hosted and produced by Noah Labhart. Be sure to subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or the podcasting app of your choice. Support the show on patreon.com/codestory for just $5 to $10 a month. And when you get a chance, leave us a review. Both things help us out tremendously. And thanks again for listening.
Business taxes. was stressing about all the time and all the money you spent on your taxes.
This is my bill?
Now Business Taxes is a TurboTax small business expert who does your taxes for you and offers year-round advice at no additional cost, so you can keep more money in your business. Now this is taxes. Intuit TurboTax. Get an expert now on TurboTax.com/business. Only available with TurboTax Live full service.